Sarah Atherton.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I stand here as a veteran, and under current legislation, hypothetically, I could be investigated for spurious claims made against me for my services in the Army back in the 80s. Therefore, I have a personal interest. I have also spoken to many veterans at surgeries, breakfast clubs and legions, and I am acutely aware of the pressures our veterans are placed under and the injustices they feel right now. Many of these veterans I have spoken to are junior ranks, and I concur with the statement of my honourable friend from Wolverhampton South West. This bill represents a huge milestone for military personnel. To be incorrectly accused of wrongdoing is an unacceptable burden. For our veterans and our veterans of the future, this bill represents an opportunity to combat that cycle of reinvestigation and vexatious claims, and also to support our service personnel who have risked their lives to defend our country and our freedoms overseas. And I thank the Secretary of State and the Minister for Veterans for bringing this bill to the House today. Madam Deputy Speaker, I would like to address the first part of this bill. The triple lock, for me, is the most crucial part of this bill. The presumption against prosecution for alleged offences committed more than 5 years ago will both curb and the often baseless claims made against veterans and stop this lawfare by those who seek to abuse the legal system. Critics of this bill cite that this protects service personnel from wrongdoing. This bill does nothing of the sort. There is no debate in this House, nor should there ever be, around the fact that if service personnel commit a crime, they must be called to account. This bill does not give service personnel de facto immunity from prosecution. There are still provisions to allow for prosecutions of historical cases where there is compelling evidence. I've had conversations with veterans living life on the edge, with constant anxiety, thoughts and fears that engulf their post-service lives and the lives of their families. We have lost too many veterans to incapacity and suicide. Veterans' health and well-being is something that I, and I know the Minister of Veterans, is committed to.
For giving way, and I hesitate to interrupt her compelling, persuasive speech, except to say this, that she's absolutely right that this bill is a huge leap forward and the Minister and the Government deserve great credit. But in addressing part 2 of the bill, she may know that I'm the champion and have led campaign on behalf of the British nuclear test veterans. Will she ask the Minister when he sums up to give an absolute assurance that those that fought a long time ago, where evidence may come forward they've been damaged through that service, won't be disadvantaged by part 2 of the bill?
I thank my honourable friend for that, and I think the Minister heard that loud and clear. Veterans' health and well-being is something that I know that I'm very passionate about, and this bill goes a long way to offering security and peace of mind. The requirement for prosecutors to consider the circumstances of warfare is a welcome element. War is not black and white, it is grey and involves instant judgments and assessments under life-threatening pressure. It is therefore right that this law reflects this reality. Whilst I am extremely supportive of this bill, I accept there are certain limitations. I would welcome further reassurance from ministers as to how we ensure claims do not bypass this legislation in favour of the International Criminal Courts by rogue lawyers. Secondly, how this bill will affect service personnel and veterans already subject to claims. And lastly, the 6-year long stop in part 2 has drawn criticism, and I would like reassurances from the ministers that this will not disadvantage the armed forces community in comparison to civilians. In conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, we in this House are responsible for sending young men and women into harm's way, and we rightly expect them to uphold the highest standards of the British Armed Forces. Despite limited reservations, this bill will protect our service personnel as we go forward. It is wrong that servicemen and women that we send into conflict should be hounded for years after their active service is over. I understand this legislation will not apply to Northern Ireland, but I am grateful for the Government's commitment to pursue this separately in Northern Irish legislation. So for the current and future service personnel and veterans of my constituency in Wrexham, I will be supporting this bill today. To vote against this bill would be to deny our service personnel the support of their politicians and this country.
And Robinson.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it is a pleasure to follow the Honourable Lady, not just because I think she made an eloquent speech, but it has been a pleasure to serve on the Defence Select Committee with her over the last number of months, and I think she is a welcomed addition to our group. I also recognise that in following that Honourable Lady, she followed the Honourable Member for West Dunbartonshire. And whilst we will have different opinions and different variances on this bill during this debate and the subsequent proceedings, I think it's right to acknowledge that as a committee, on the Defence Select Committee, Madam Deputy Speaker, there is a great level of collegiality, a great level of cohesiveness amongst us, and we work well, sincerely in the interests of armed forces and all those who serve our country.